Hi, friend. I want to talk to you today about living and moving abroad in 2025 and beyond. If you have depressive tendencies and you're scared of what might happen if you move abroad and you hit an unprecedented low, or you feel stuck or stagnant or immobile and unable to function in your daily life, which for those of us who experience depression is a very real concern. So here's the tea. Hi, my name is Elle, also known as the Empress of Ease and the creator of the House of Ease, where I help ambitious women create lives of ease without suffering, self-sacrifice, or struggle, because the struggle is not actually real. I'm also preparing to move abroad to Bangkok, Thailand in just a little bit over a month, and I'm very excited about it. But as someone who has lived and traveled in 26 countries and also has experienced depression, this is something top of mind for me that I'm very aware about as I'm planning my move abroad. I thought as I was preparing for this, thinking about my mental health and my mental well-being, that it might also be something that other people who deal with depression might also be challenged with as they're preparing to or currently living abroad. Because although I am the Empress of Ease and very proudly committed to living a life of ease and flow with as much simplicity and joy as possible, that doesn't mean spiritual bypassing, that doesn't mean mental health bypassing, that doesn't mean emotional health bypassing, that doesn't mean pretending things aren't existing in order to live a life of ease. It actually means creating a life around the reality of your lived experience. So for me, part of that is having a tendency sometimes to go into depressive episodes where I just feel immobile and can't get out of bed sometimes or function. I am unmedicated. I've never had medication for depression. I've never been clinically diagnosed. I just know that I've experienced depression off and on since I was 19 years old. And I hate it. It's very unpleasant. It is not fun, but it's not going to keep me from living my life or doing the things I want to do. I have figured out some best practices to keep my head afloat and keep me navigating in the best way possible. Please share your resources, share your strategies, share your practices so that we can all be bipping and bopping and traveling and living our best lives, whether depression wants to rear its head or not. As I've said, I've lived in and or traveled to 26 countries all around the world: Asia, Africa, Central and South America, the Caribbean, Europe. I've been to every continent except for Antarctica. And there are certain things throughout my travels, throughout the years, that have made depression stay completely at bay. And there are some things that make it flood into my life and keep me depressed and immobile. So I'm going to share with you today some of the best practices that I've learned from having lived and traveled to over 26 countries, and how I'm using those best practices and learnings to prepare for my move abroad in just 6 weeks. I'm starting out in Bangkok, Thailand, and then we'll be going to Vietnam. And then who knows? My intention is to find a place that I want to be based in Southeast Asia so that I can bip and bop around, because I want to see Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Bhutan. I know all of those aren't just Southeast Asia, but Asia in general. I also want to name that I come from a family with mental health challenges. I have mental health challenges on both sides of my family. Some of us have dealt with it really well and thoughtfully and intentionally committed to being well. And some of us have just avoided and pretended, and has come around to bite us in the butt in the long run. I also come from a blues people. I'm currently listening to Black in Blues: How a Color Tells the Story of My People by Imani Perry. It's a beautiful recounting of the color blue itself in many different iterations, and also the experience of the blues. I highly recommend it. If you're an Audible listener, I'll put my Audible link below, but it's also available everywhere that books are sold. Say hi, comment, and subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you know the next time I have a video go up. When I think about depression, I think about the literal word depressed. And one thing that's helped me throughout the years of dealing with and healing with and working with my experience of depression has been what needs to be expressed. What am I actually depressing that's causing this sense of depression, of being sunken, of being low, of being below what I want to be feeling? What is being depressed in me? And so part of that requires self-expression, right? That's what I've learned that I need to do. This is part of why I value direct communication, why I value speaking of what my truth, why I value saying what needs to be said. And also part of self-expression for me is movement, is art, is creativity. As I'm preparing to fly out to Bangkok and then be in Southeast Asia in just a few weeks, I've been researching and looking at classes that I will want to take. Dance classes, movement classes, yoga classes, Pilates classes, bar classes, different things that will get me out and about and in the world and in community. One of the things that I've experienced that's very challenging when I've traveled abroad and lived abroad is a sense of isolation. Even though I have done my best effort to connect with people and meet with people, joining Facebook groups and meetup groups, as a social introvert, which basically means I like people, but I am an introvert and it can take me a while to warm up and get to know people. Social groups and expat groups sometimes work for me and sometimes they don't. It just depends on who the group constitutes of. But also, what's important for me is to have other functions to go to with local people, things that are already happening. And when I lived in Rwanda, I was dealing with really severe physical health issues, which required me to come back to the United States and have medical care and emergency surgery and all this stuff. But I was also dealing with this sense of isolation. I had this gorgeous, beautiful, big house, which I really loved. I had domestic support, which I deeply appreciated, but I did not have a sense of community and belonging. And there weren't enough accessible activities that I knew about, at least, to go out and bip and bop and just plug into something that was already happening. There were some activities, there were social events and gatherings, but I think I need a more dynamic city that I can kind of plug into anything, any day of the week, any kind of community gathering, whether it's expats or locals or a combination of both, that I can just find things to do to be out and about. And for me, part of that self-expression, part of that connecting, part of that conversation is physical movement. So like I said, dance classes, yoga classes, or even walking groups. What are people doing outside? How are people gathering? How are people meeting? So that is a huge thing for me, because when I was in Rwanda, for example, I felt so isolated because my house was still in the city, but kind of in a suburb on the outskirts of the main part of the city. And I would have to take a car or a taxi or a motorcycle or something to get into the city. There wasn't necessarily, for my experience, a centralized hub. And so I know Bangkok has a much more dynamic social scene in lots of different ways. So I'm looking forward to going out and about, but I don't necessarily want to be in the bar scene. Like, that's not what I'm looking for, but I do want to plug into activities that are already happening. I just flashed back to being in Kigali in Rwanda, and I was so isolated and so alone in my big, beautiful house. I like having friends come over and hanging out. I like being able to go to friends' houses and hang out. Like, I don't want to do all my socializing at a bar or a restaurant or at a club. I want to be able to just hang out and kick it. I am a tourist. I like to chill at home as well. And so this is something that I'm thinking about, because this will help stave off the sense of depression and the sense of isolation that can come when I have been traveling before. If you want the whole tea about my experience living in Kigali, Rwanda, check out this video right here. I haven't decided yet where I want my home base to be. So maybe it's going to be Bangkok, which I doubt, but maybe, who knows? Maybe it's going to be Vietnam. Maybe it's going to be somewhere else. And so as I'm exploring and country shopping and city shopping, I'm going to be staying in Airbnbs. After some really whack experiences renting a room, staying in people's houses in Australia, I was like, never again. I'm never doing that again. I'm going only to rent the entire place. But because I know that I don't want to feel isolated, I want to feel connected, I want to be in community with people, instead of renting the entire place and going home to my rental by myself, I'm renting rooms in places that are explicitly and intentionally homestays. Some of them serve breakfast. Some of them have meeting rooms where people are hanging out, other expats, other travelers, where there's a relationship with the host, with the family, with the people who live there. I experienced this also when I was in Tanzania. That was very helpful, having meals with families, having conversation. Even if we spoke limited pieces of each other's languages, it was very helpful for me to feel human, to feel connected, to feel like I was part of something by staying with people's families. My Bangkok, Thailand stay is a homestay. My Da Nang, Vietnam stay is a homestay. My Hoi An, Vietnam stay is also a homestay. I only booked with places where the previous guests sing high praises of the host, sing high praises of the efforts that the host made, sing high praises of their experience, of the food, of their time there. There's other things that I look for when looking for my Airbnb, when booking them, but those are some of the most important that help me determine the families and the people that I'm going to stay with. I've been to Paris multiple times, but when I actually lived there, the second place that I lived was with a family. I had met someone on couchsurfing.com. She wasn't an overnight host, but she was a day host. And I had been living out in St. Cloud, which is a suburb of Paris. And I was like, I want to be in the city. And she said, let me ask my parents if they might be interested in renting my old room to you. And they were, and which was great. But even inside of their house, I felt very isolated and alone because they weren't intentionally and deliberately a homestay. They were just renting a room to a random American stranger. It wasn't a homestay. So there was an instance that I remember when they had a family dinner or family brunch or something, including the person who I had met through couch sitters because she had a couple of siblings. And they had a family dinner and I was just upstairs. They didn't invite me to join. They didn't ask me if I wanted to come, nothing, because I'm not French and I had already had some mishaps, misunderstanding cultural norms and expectations. So I didn't want to impose myself. I just remember being in my room while they were meeting and having a family meal and enjoying themselves. I'm from Seattle, but I was raised by Black Southern people who are very invitational, very open, very welcoming. If you are a guest in the house, you are family. Of course, you're invited to dinner. Of course, you're invited to fellowship and be with us. Like I've come from a very communal people. I know, that's not a universal experience, but I definitely made me feel more isolated to be in a house and intentionally not invited to join the festivities. As I'm looking at and choosing my Airbnb stays, it's important to me that the hosts are active hosts, are participatory and helpful hosts to me as a guest, because I know that human connection, especially when I'm traveling, especially when I don't know the culture and I don't have a relationship with people yet, that people actually seeing me, physically seeing me and speaking to me and greeting me and welcoming me into their home and preparing food that we may eat together is very important to keep my mental health buoyant, to help me stay connected and to keep my spirits up and my energy up, because I love people. I'm an introvert for sure, but I also really love people. I love connecting with people. I love seeing people and I love feeling welcome and I love feeling a sense of belonging. The other thing that I'm doing is there's an organization called SERVAS, which is an international peacekeeping organization. How it works is you apply to the organization, which is $33 per year. Then you apply to be a host and or a traveler. And you have to get recommendations and interview. And once you are accepted, you can say which countries you're traveling to. And then you can request directories of the countries that you'll be traveling to. Now, some people are day hosts, some people are overnight hosts. It's usually 2 nights max, but you stay with the family and they are intentional and deliberate hosts because it's an international peacekeeping organization. So their entire intention is to build one-on-one or family relationships internationally through homestays and hosting. So some people are just day hosts and some people are overnight hosts. I joined SERVAS years ago when I was traveling in India and Nepal, and this was phenomenal. This was phenomenal for me because I ended up staying with families who owned a daycare. I joined weddings. I traveled with the families because they can extend the stay, right? Like they can say, do you want to stay longer with us? Let's go do this. Let's go do that. That was phenomenal. And so, of course, it's been years and my original membership to SERVAS has expired, but I've reapplied because I want to stay with families. This is a huge thing for me that deeply helps my nervous system. It helps my emotional health. It helps my mental health. It helps me to feel connected because I also don't want to feel just like a stranger in a strange land, just traveling around aimlessly, not connecting with the people who live there. My mother, who's also a world traveler, always says, if you haven't stayed with a family, if you haven't broken bread, if you haven't shared a meal with a family, you actually haven't visited that country. And I feel that very, very strongly. If I'm just bipping and bopping and seeing other tourists and other expats, to me, it doesn't actually count as living in or having traveled to that country. So going out, planning activities that I actually want to be doing, not just tourist activities, but other things I actually enjoy and want to be doing, dance, yoga, meditation. Let's see what else is out there, what else people are doing, Airbnb, homestays, and SERVAS. These are 3 things that are huge for me and my mental health. The other thing is I'm very sensitive and impacted by the sun and heat. If it's cold and dark and rainy, it's much easier for me to slip into a depression and it's much harder for me to get out of it. I know it's very strange that I live in Seattle, Washington right now, but that's another conversation for another day. If you want more details about that, check out this video right here. It's important to me that I'm going somewhere that's sunny and warm, and I don't mind heat, so I can be super hot. My favorite thing is being naked in the sun, so I don't mind being hot and wearing what I would consider summer clothes most of the year. I could deal with 80 degrees 90% of the year. So that's why one of the main reasons I'm going to Southeast Asia, because the weather also helps my mental health. The temperature also helps my mental health. It's also a social society. But something that I'm also aware of that can trigger my sense of isolation and depression is being in a busy, busy, busy city and having lots of things going on all around me, but not knowing anyone, not knowing how to tap in, not knowing how to connect, which is part of why I'm researching classes and activities and things that I want to do and small meetup groups and connections. So if you have ideas about things I can do, places I can go, ways I can meet people in Thailand, in Cambodia, in Laos, in Vietnam, in Sri Lanka, in Bhutan, in Myanmar, please share below, because I really do want to meet all kinds of people from all over the world, but especially locals, and build relationships with locals. Another one of my important considerations as I was looking for my Airbnb is I want places that are quiet, because I need to be able to sleep. I need to be able to get a good night's sleep. I want to be somewhere that's accessible to things that I can do and have, conveniences, but I don't want to be woken up in the middle of the night or not be able to actually sleep because of karaoke or street noises or horns honking. When I was in Cuba, which I love Cuba down from the crown of my head to the soles of my feet. Havana is a very noisy city all hours of the day, and it was very difficult for me to sleep there. So that's something that I'm aware of. So when I look at the places, even in Bangkok, even in Da Nang, even in Hoi An, when I'm looking at places, all of my Airbnbs are places that previous visitors' reviews say that it's quiet, that it's accessible to the public transportation or close to activities or things to do, but that the place itself is quiet. That is incredibly important to me. It's also important to me that's walkable, right? That I can walk either to the train station or to food or to restaurants or to things so that I can have just a lower bar of entry into feeling like I'm part of something, feeling like I'm part of the community. This is really important for me to get a slide in and feel connected and feel like I am actually acclimating faster. Another huge important thing, because mind, body, soul, right? It's all connected. We can't just focus on one thing and hope that the rest catch up. So for me, one really important thing that I've learned through my years of traveling is get a deep massage and body work before I leave. And as soon as I arrive, have one booked for at least a 2-hour massage to get me back in my body. Now, I'm also going to be doing throughout my travels videos showing you my favorite spas and retreats and massages and body work and everything I'm doing, because I believe very strongly in body work, and I want to show you how to create a life of ease through being well taken care of physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. So that's just that's going to be part of the channel when I'm out and about bipping and bopping in the world for sure. But I want to also name that as helping me get in my body, take care of my emotional well-being, take care of my mental well-being. Body work is really important before and upon arrival, as soon as I arrive. And so the other thing that I have talked about this extensively, I will always say this, I love to fly first class. I especially love flying first class internationally. I love when that bed goes horizontal and I can close that door and fade off into La La Land and have them make my bed and a glass of champagne. Oh, it's my favorite. My current one-way ticket to Bangkok does not involve a first-class ticket. It's not in my budget right now, but I'm still flying a really lovely airlines whose economy seats are still very plush and lovely. I have a several-hour layover, and I'm considering buying a pass to one of their lounges so that I can really relax and enjoy myself. Now, to some people that might seem frivolous, and I don't care. And it helps support my mental health because it makes it physically easier, mentally easier. It makes it smoother to just transition and not have to sit in a noisy or loud airport, not have to be in the hustle and bustle, but be able to snack, be able to get good food, be able to relax, be able to rest. This is very important to me. And it helps me arrive with as much of my well-being, my sense of ease, my sense of restoration, my energy intact, because it's going to be a huge time difference. It's going to be a huge cultural difference. It's going to be a huge weather difference. So many things are going to be different. And so I want to be able to arrive well rested and in deep ease. For example, I've arranged already for my Airbnb is going to be picking me up from the airport. Part of what also helps my mental health is to do as much on the front end as possible. Now, as I mentioned, have traveled to 26 countries. I have lived abroad. I have been lots of places before. During some periods of my life, I would just fly by the seat of my pants. I would arrive, get my visa at the airport, figure out my transportation with my Lonely Planet physical book, and figure it out, and I was fine. But at my big age and at my desire for an easeful, well-nourished life and healthy nervous system without falling into the caverns of depression, I want to take care of some of these important things ahead of time. I'm okay with paying for extra luggage. I'm okay for paying for the car service. I'm okay for paying for the things that are going to make my travel as smooth and easy as possible. When I'm traveling abroad and living abroad, it's helpful for me to have scheduled conversations with my friends and loved ones stateside. People who I know, okay, we're going to check in on this day. We're going to check in once a month. We're going to check in once every 3 weeks. We're going to check in just to see how we're doing, because I can feel so isolated, and that does trigger depression for me. It doesn't keep me home. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't keep me home, but it's helpful to know that my loved ones, people who care about me, people who are checking for me, people who are looking out for me and praying for me and wishing the best for me, that we check in and catch up with each other regularly. That's important to both of us. We're all living our grown-up lives, but to know that other people are checking for me is also very helpful. And of course, it goes without saying, eating fresher food, being healthy, outdoors in the sun, having clear and healthy boundaries, choosing the path of least resistance, being healthy, thinking wonderful thoughts about myself, loving myself, honoring myself, cherishing myself, having high standards for who I let into my life, what conversations and relationships I create and maintain, all of that kind of stuff, right? Like that goes without saying. If you have a propensity to go into more depressive moods, it's important to think about how can you make this experience of traveling and moving and living abroad, how can you stave off depression as much as possible? What's helpful for me is intentional community, activities, being somewhere quiet, eating good food, being well supported and connected with people who intentionally want to host. I'm going to always be outside. I'm going to bip and bop and explore, but also being places that makes that easy for me, where I can just hop on public transportation, where there are museums or activities or events or things going on that I can plug into. I'm curious, if you experience depression, what are some of your travel best practices? Please share them in the comments below. What helps you keep your mental health afloat, and what helps you take care of yourself while you're traveling abroad? If you are interested in getting support and guidance, I have a one-on-one alignment hour. We can talk about planning your move abroad, support strategies, how you can live your best life and from a place of ease instead of exhaustion. There's so many things that we can talk about, and I would love to work with you. So check out the link below for my alignment hour. Say hi, comment, and subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you know the next time I have a video go up. As I said, I'm getting ready to leave the country. I'm heading to Southeast Asia very soon, and you're going to want to see all my adventures out and about in the world, because I'm so excited about all the things I'm going to be doing, the places I'm going to be going, the food I'm going to be eating, the relaxing massage, spa treatments I'm going to be getting, the nature I'm going to be seeing, the people I'm going to be meeting. So please comment, say hi, and subscribe so that you are part of this conversation as I go out and about in the world. If you want to know all the details, the who's it's and the what's it's of how I'm preparing to move abroad, you are going to want to watch this video. It's going to be incredibly helpful for you so that you too can have the best move abroad or trip abroad of your life. Check it out right here, and I will see you there. Bye for now.